welcome to our discussion here, WhalePool and Dydx. I would like to introduce Corey, who I understand is the CMO of Dydx. Dydx is a protocol for margin trading and perpetuals trading on Ethereum. Um, and they recently have done a pivot to layer 2 functionality for their product. Welcome, Corey. Thanks for joining WhalePool for this discussion.
All right. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Okay, so for people that don't know what Dydx is, I know you guys and Antonio actually came on last year. I thought we had a really great discussion. At that point, things were very different in that environment than currently at the moment. And so in the current state of things, I would like to just hear from you to tell everybody just like what Dydx is and your journey since you guys have started up until where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So Dydx is a decentralized exchange that runs on Ethereum. We actually started, I would say we were one of like the earliest DeFi projects out there. So started a few years ago now. And our first product was really a margin trading protocol. And so we had the ability for people to deposit assets, those being Ethereum, USDC, and Dai, where they could get interest on them. And so we had lending pools running in the background. And then on top of that, we had a margin trading system. And so people could trade these assets with leverage. And yeah, so that was our first product. Our second product was perpetuals. And so, as many people know, perpetuals are the most highly traded product in all of crypto. And so we wanted to bring those into, a decentralized exchange. And so we launched those last year on layer 1. And so we had the ability to trade Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Chainlink perpetuals. And yeah, those functioned pretty well. But like a lot of DeFi protocols, the gas fees, both for perpetuals and margin trading, started to become quite a lot over the course of last year. And so we decided that we really need to focus and build out on a layer 2 solution. And so we partnered with a company called Starkware to build out a layer 2 solution based off of their ZK rollup technologies. And we officially launched that a couple of weeks ago now. And so right now we have a layer 2 protocol for trading perpetuals. And so I'd say the advantages of trading on our layer 2 is once you deposit and get your account set up, there are no more gas fees associated with trading. We've introduced cross margining, which a lot of traders are very excited about. We have increased the amount of leverage that traders are allowed to take. So we have up to 25x leverage on markets such as Bitcoin and Ethereum. And we are also focusing on launching a long tail of assets over the course of the year, with the ultimate goal of kind of becoming on par with some of the major centralized exchanges in terms of the amount of assets that we have. So right now we have Bitcoin, Ethereum, Chainlink, Uniswap, and Aave. And we're going to be launching markets basically every week. And so hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be somewhere around, let's say 35 to 50 assets total on our layer 2 solution.
Okay, so that's a decent overview. Now I want to sort of zoom in on a bunch of the different points that were made throughout that summary. So the first one I want to ask more specifically about is you said that the spot and spot margin that is launched at the moment on layer 1 has not been ported over to layer 2. It's only the perpetuals that have been moved over to layer 2. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the margin trading system and the spot trading, which are combined, those will stay on layer 1. And those will probably stay as is for the foreseeable future. Most of our engineering resources are being focused on continuing to build out the layer 2 solution. And so, yeah, the layer 2 solution is only going to be for perpetuals for right now. And the layer 1 perpetuals are going to be phased out on April 20th. So after April 20th, the only way to trade perpetuals on Dydx will be via the layer 2 solution.
So is anybody using the spot and spot margin on layer 1 in this current fee environment? Is there any reason to like even bother keeping it running?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. A lot of volume is still actually flowing through the margin trading system. And so it's still, I would say, very active. A lot of people use it for lending and loans, and a good amount of people still use it for trading as well. I would say it's not really well suited for people who don't have a lot of capital deposited and are trading with a lot of capital, given that the fees are so high. But if you are, let's say, a whale, there are potentially some benefits to using it. Interest rates are definitely lower when trading on margin versus perpetuals, as many people know. So depending on how much leverage and how often you're trading, it still may be a good solution for some people.
So in the spot margin, like you at the moment, it seems like there's only ETH, DAI, and USDC. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so where's the capital coming from for when someone is borrowing? Like, why are people lending at such low rates there when there's other alternatives for them to earn interest?
Yeah, so I'd say our lending pools are basically function similarly to what you might find on something like Aave or Compound. So generally, our interest rates are pretty similar to those protocols. There is some sort of equilibrium that is reached naturally, I would say. And I would say the other reason that people deposit on DYDX for interest purposes um, is kind of the security of our protocol. So we definitely pride ourselves on our protocol remaining very secure. We've never had a smart contract hack or anything like that. And so given that we've been around for a while now, considering how early DeFi is, I think our lending pools have definitely proven to be safe.
So if I'm so then you got the lenders, and then there's the traders who are borrowing and taking a position. Uh, have you had any issues with processing liquidations and having adequate liquidity to make sure the lenders are made whole when a user is under collateralized?
Yeah, it's a good question. No, we've never had issues to date. I mean, all loans remained over collateralized, similar to how loans work on other protocols within DeFi. And for like margin trades, where you're keeping your collateral within the DYDX system, our liquidation engines have performed adequately enough where we've never had to actually use the insurance fund or anything like that.
So the insurance fund is just monotonically increased. There hasn't been any drawdowns to properly cover liquidations.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's pretty good. I'm looking at I guess it's a spot and margin book because the margin is just traded on top of your spot book for layer 1. How is the order book moving around so fast? It's updating as if it's a centralized exchange, but I thought that is it that the orders are off chain and the fills are the ones that get pushed on chain? Is that how it works?
Yeah, that's a really good question and a good distinction. And yeah, that's correct. So I would say DYDX is kind of a hybrid decentralized exchange where the order book and matching engine is off chain on our centralized servers. but trade settlement happens on chain.
Right. And so the reason why, and this is sort of what we covered last year, but I wanted to refresh people's memories, because then the fact, even though you're really just pushing the fills on chain, that this is still not sustainable, right? And can you give us an idea of like the order of magnitude of the fees that you guys have been covering for publishing the fills on layer one, just for some kind of context so people can understand the damage that having this kind of approach is?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I guess it totally depends on kind of the gas cost environment. At the gas cost peak, let's say, filling a trade on chain could cost upwards of $1,000, which is obviously incredibly expensive. And so, if you want to scale an exchange, that obviously can't happen. So, I would say the difference between settling it every trade on layer one and then ultimately settling it via our layer two solution. The cost to settle a trade in our layer two solution, it's a little bit hard to say. Dydx definitely subsidizes, like gas costs aren't zero. We subsidize gas costs for users. But for us, there's definitely, a lot of cost savings. But for the user's perspective, there's actually no gas cost associated at all. So the trading schedule that you see on our site is the trading schedule that you're going to be charged, very similar to how you'll be charged on a centralized exchange. And I guess going back to the layer one solution, we, in the gas cost environment, we kind of had to switch it where we had a schedule. But if the anticipated gas costs of filling that trade were high, which is true for basically all like what we called small orders, we would just charge you whatever the gas cost was going to be. And so if you were trading like $100, you might see like a fee of, multiple hundreds, or, let's say $500 or something, right? And obviously that doesn't make sense for people. But now, if you want to do like $100 trade on Dydx, you're going to be charged something like 20 bips.
Right. And okay, so that's currently in, and you said you're deprecating the perpetuals, which has the same system where you have the order creation and the matching is happening off chain, but the fills then get published on chain. Like the perpetuals, that's been sunset here in 5 days, so that's no longer going to be accessible on layer one.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. So we're gonna basically what happens is the smart contracts are entering final settlement, and so on that date and time, any open position will be automatically closed at the given Oracle price, and then any users who still had positions or collateral on those smart contracts can come to the site and withdraw.
Right, and so that's going to be deprecated then, but you're still going to run the spot and margin stuff on layer one there.
Yeah. So that'll stay as is. We don't have any plans to really upgrade that in the near future, and we don't have any current plans to port that over to layer two as of yet.
Okay. So that's the context of what where you guys have been, and now I just want to focus mostly just on this layer two and these new perpetuals that you guys have launched. So I guess the one before was like margin.dydx.exchange. So anybody that's listening, you can go to trade.dydx.exchange, and then basically it's a very similar experience, right? You hook up MetaMask, and you have to go through these whole motions in order to hook up with the layer two. So let me describe to you my user experience when I was first starting it. Actually, I have some notes here. So, okay, I started fresh with a totally new Ethereum account, and basically the first thing I had to do was register on StarkX. So I had to register on this layer two thing, which was just an on-chain transaction, which cost me $15. And then because your perpetuals are using USDC only, it's a single collateral system. I then had to approve interacting with this smart contract for USDC. That was another, you know, $10-15. And then after that, actually, I didn't have any USDC, so I had to go out and swap some ETH to get USDC, which I'm not going to count that against you guys because, you know, maybe someone should have USDC, but I didn't have any, so I had to spend $50 to do an on-chain swap to get some USDC. And then when I deposited USDC into the layer 2, it cost me $36. So even just someone that is so I mean, I'm totally with the narrative and the idea that layer 2 is a good way to scale things and to have a better user experience in general. But even just crossing that you know, that bridge to get into layer 2, like I had to pay, depending on how you measure which point of those frictions you want to include. Like I had to spend at least $50 just to get in the door, basically. Which that's the cost of getting into layer 2. But then, as you described, once you're in layer 2, it's very, you know, nice centralized kind of experience. But basically, anything I want to trade with, I have to put in the layer 2 first, right? So it's like the matching and the order creation is still centralized. That's not happening like on a layer 2, right? That's still happening in the same system, the same overall way that you were describing before. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, I guess to go back to your first point with onboarding to Dydx, yeah, we definitely hear you and understand there certainly is some friction involved with onboarding to a layer 2 solution right now. So yeah, I'd say it costs $50 ultimately to onboard. We are looking at ways to expedite and kind of make process a lot smoother. So for one example, we are going to be releasing a integration with the 0x API very soon. And so what that's going to mean is if you don't have USDC in your wallet, when you come to Dydx Exchange, you could swap for USDC via our front end very seamlessly and kind of deposit, and that'll all happen within kind of the front end interface. So you don't have to go to another exchange to swap for USDC. So hopefully that helps some people with that, and that's going to be the same for depositing and withdrawing. So if you want to withdraw USDC back into ETH or something like that, we'll also enable you to do that via the 0x API. And then ultimately for the gas costs for onboarding, it is something we are thinking about. And so we may run some sort of promotion in the future that subsidizes some of this cost. We'll see. We're still kind of analyzing what the numbers look like, but that is something that definitely is on our minds.
Yeah, that's our friends at Diversify. I'm not sure if you've heard of them. They used to be called ETH. They're running on StarkX as well, and I think they're doing a promotion, like giving $20, which honestly doesn't even cover it. But yeah, they're doing a promotion which I think helps at least mitigate the damage of getting into to at least try the layer 2 experience. So that is definitely one approach.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So actually, since I mentioned that, before we get into more details of the system, like if I, so is there some benefit that can be had from the fact that you're on StarkX and Diversify is on StarkX and maybe other projects will connect into StarkX? Is this like an ecosystem where I can sort of jump between the exchanges? Like if I wanted to arbitrage between Diversify and Dydx, would this like be smoother since you're both on the same layer 2?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, the answer to that is no, unfortunately. So all of these layer 2s that are on top of Starkware are technically like separate systems. However, Starkware is kind of continuing to build this out. And so in the future, that very well may be the case where it will be easier to kind of integrate with other systems. But yeah, at the moment, and probably for the foreseeable, next few quarters or something, like all of these layer twos are definitely distinct and separate.
So Starkware is the company and StarkX is the actual layer 2, or am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, cool. All right, well, maybe okay. So we talked about how before that all you're doing is pushing the fills to the chain, and this perpetuals system is the same, but you're just pushing the fills to the StarkX layer 2, which uses zero knowledge rollups.
Yeah, it's definitely different, but yeah, at its core, it's fairly similar. So basically, yeah, the trades are getting matched via our matching engine still. Those then get sent to basically get rolled up via batch, which we work with Starkware to do, and then batches are ultimately settled on layer 1. Let's say once every 8 hours or so. And so all of those trades that happened in the previous 8 hours will then be finalized and settled on layer 1 once they're kind of rolled up into that batch and sent to the main chain. But from the user's perspective, once the trade happens, it's completely finalized. And you don't have to wait to withdraw or anything like that. Like we do have the option for what we call fast withdrawals. And so, you could theoretically make a trade, or let's say you could actually theoretically deposit, make a trade, and withdraw very quickly. And you don't necessarily have to wait for like an actual batch to be settled on layer 1.
What does this fast withdrawal constitute? Are you providing liquidity until the batch is actually complete in order to facilitate that withdrawal, or how does it work?
Yeah, exactly. So basically, Dydx takes whatever perceived risk, which we think is zero. So we know, we have knowledge as to like how much capital you're ultimately going to be owed, and so we send you. Let's say you're owed. Let's say you have $100 of collateral on the exchange. We'll send you $100 on chain on Ethereum, and then we will basically take that $100 of collateral on layer 2 and like basically give it to us.
So you provide the withdrawal on layer 1, providing that liquidity, and then you move on layer 2 from basically their account to your own account, so to offset it.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. All right, so then, so user experience wise, yeah, I went through those steps, and then once you get USDC in there, in the in perpetuals, make sure that you're on the layer 2, because the layer 1 is still kind of running, but then you got to make sure you're on the layer 2, and then sort of once you've deposited the USDC in there, select any of those. At the moment, it's 5 contracts. I'll just repeat them for the benefit of the listeners. That it's ETH USD, Bitcoin USD, Chainlink USD, Uniswap USD, and Aave USD. So you can only use USDC in order to trade these, which means that's why Bitcoin USD is tradable, because you don't actually use Bitcoin, you're only using USDC. And then like you said, you're going to be listing plenty more. But the idea is that it's cross-margined in the sense that it's just one margin account. You put USDC into it, and you can trade basically any 5 of those at the same time, all of them or any of them at the same time. But for any given contract, you can only maintain a net long or net short position. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So for any contract, you can only have one open position.
But I could be long Ethereum, short Bitcoin, long Chainlink, short Uni, long Aave, and so I can have 5 positions in total with that one margin account that contains USDC. And then there's varying margin requirements depending on the pair that the contract that I'm trading on.
Yes, that's exactly correct.
And what kind of leverage are we talking about here? Like, what's the highest leverage and the lowest leverage that's offered on? Like, I guess it varies based on size and stuff.
So basically, we have up to 25x leverage for Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then all other markets we have up to 10x leverage.
Okay. And you have an insurance fund. Where do I see the insurance fund? I can't see how much is behind the market at the moment.
Yeah, it's a good question. We do, I believe, publicize the insurance fund. It's actually the same insurance fund as the layer 1 perpetuals right now. So those are like sharing the insurance fund, and then once the layer 1 perpetuals are deprecated in 5 days, we're just going to be transferring that over to the layer 2 insurance fund. I think we publicize the Ethereum address for that, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
What's the order of magnitude? Any idea? Like, we're talking about $10 million, $1 million, less?
Yeah, it's like somewhere between like $1 and $10 million.
Okay. So I'm looking. So I'm selecting ETHUSD. I can't seem to find like the open interest in the market at the moment. Like how much, at the moment in ETHUSD, what is the long and short positions? I'm just getting an idea. I can see the volume. Oh, sorry, I see it there. 3,300 ETH is the open interest. So that is okay, cool. So that's something like almost like $10 million worth of positions that are open at the moment. The 24-hour volume looks like it's about 15 million. So yeah, you got some activity there, and ETHUSD looks like the most popular contract. Which Oracle are you using? This Oracle price, which is actually it's different than the index price. Can you explain what the difference is between index and Oracle in this context, and where does the source of the data come from?
Yeah, absolutely. It's another really good question. So the Oracle that we use is now all of our markets use Chainlink oracles. So they actually spun up a layer 2 solution for us. So all of our markets right now are using Chainlink's oracles. There are other Oracle providers who are currently onboarding to be able to send us prices. So in the future, other markets may have different Oracle providers, but right now it's just Chainlink. And so those Oracle prices are sent something like once every 10 seconds. But the index price is something that we calculate ourselves, and that is updated instantly. And so for any orders stop limit orders or anything like that, those will be executed based off of the index price, just to ensure there isn't like a lag, from the Oracle price. But ultimately, any liquidations are going to be based off of the Oracle price.
Right. So essentially the Oracle price is like the mark price, because that's what's determining my P&L, and that's what's determining like whether I'm getting liquidated.
Yeah.
Okay, and it looks like you guys have some decent, fairly decent liquidity. Who is quoting in this order book? Like, what is their incentive to be providing this amount of liquidity in the books? What sort of programs are you running that give people a reason to be there?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, I mean, we have relationships with a variety of DMMs, and so we have a public fee schedule. So if you are a market maker and you are doing a lot of volume, you will subsequently get a better or a fee tier rate. So that is the main incentive. that we have, and we work with a lot of market makers very closely to ensure adequate liquidity on our exchange.
Yeah, I mean, because it's got to be more than just the volume-based fee incentives, right? Because I can see there's blocks in the book at a certain distance. It almost seems like you've got some arrangements for them to maintain some kind of size within a certain spread so that users are having a decent experience when they're buying and selling, and they're not getting scared. They're taking a position that they're not going to unwind.
Yeah, exactly. So like similar to a lot of other exchanges, in addition to the fee schedule, we also, occasionally loan some amount of capital directly to market makers for them to keep on the books for Dydx.
And okay, so yeah, no, I think it's a healthy enough market. I feel like any trader that wants to do, not humongous size, but they want to take a punt, long or short, like the market seems functional. It's easy to get in and out without crazy amounts of slippage. So one thing though is that obviously this is you call it the hybrid DEX, which is an interesting qualifier because I guess you're competing with DEXs, and there's these layer 2 derivatives exchanges are getting pretty popular. There's perpetual protocol, there's leverage A, whatever they're called, and then some derivative DEX, I think. So it's getting more and more popular, right? For this idea of doing derivatives, but because of the computational intensity involved with margining and the risk system and all that stuff, you kind of have to do like layer 2 is like it's necessary. There aren't really any aside from options. Like I know there's a couple of options things that do it on layer 1, but you kind of have to do it in layer 2. What made you decide to go with StarkX and the zero knowledge rollups instead of using sort of like one of the side chains like XDAI or Matic or one of the sort of plasma side chains like Gluon or Optimism, which I guess still isn't technically out, but sort of like one of these optimistic rollups?
Yeah. Great question. So I'd say we wanted to maintain the same security that we had on layer 1 for layer 2. And so some of the others, like I guess the difference between a rollup and a sidechain is that when you deposit onto a sidechain, you're ultimately trusting the node providers who are running that sidechain not to be, bad actors. So ultimately, we didn't want to take that inherent risk, and so when you do a rollup, there's essentially you essentially get rid of that specific risk scenario. And then the other reason that we chose Starkware specifically for this deployment was we started looking into this last year, so call it mid last year. And at the time, Starkware was already live on mainnet with other protocols such as Diversify. And so to us, that was a really strong signal that, their product worked, it was already on mainnet. And so with that, we felt most comfortable going with them that we could actually get something on mainnet in the fastest way possible. Whereas, if we went with another layer 2, let's say Optimism or something like that, it was less clear exactly when we were actually going to be able to go live on mainnet. And, our users, for obvious reasons, were hurting with all the gas fees that they were paying, doing margin trading and perpetual trading. And so, we just wanted to basically go with the layer 2 that we thought could go live the quickest, as well as maintain the trust guarantees that we were comfortable with.
Okay, so let's talk about those trust guarantees. So one of the cool things about your layer 1 experience was, if I go into my trades history, I can just click a link and see on chain that my fill was filled at a given price, and like that's one of those cool, like I don't have to trust it, I can verify it. And so the thing that always gets me about ZK rollups, and I love the technology, don't get me wrong, but it feels always a bit black box to me because I look at my trade history, and I've done a bit of trading on here, and it's been a good experience. But so yeah, I look at my history here, and I don't have any links. Like, it shows the trades, but I don't really have any under the fills. I don't have any link where I can click it and see, okay, StarkX has rolled up my trade, and I can verify that I got filled at the right price, and I feel good that everything is transparent and above board. How so what am I getting wrong here, first of all? And then second of all, how do you reconcile like this complexity that ZK rollups has inherently, in my opinion, and this sort of transparency that users want in being able to verify what they have done on chain?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and I guess something I haven't really thought about until just now. But yeah, I guess the difference between trading on our layer two solution and our layer two solution is you won't actually have a verification link that'll like link you to Etherscan on every single trade. And the reason for that is because as I mentioned, like all these trades are settled in batches every 8 hours or so on Ethereum. And then even if you were to go to the batch, it doesn't actually show you every single trade. And so there is an inherent, there are a lot more privacy guarantees with trading on uh, trading with ZK rollups on Dydx. But yeah, what you lose, so like you gain more privacy, and then I guess what you lose is like the auditability of every single transaction. Um, However, having said that, from a technical perspective, you always have the ability to like challenge something if something were to go wrong. Um, and if you could like submit a proof that something did go wrong, you could effectively shut down the whole system and like get whatever amount of money that you were owed. Um, but
How does that work? So that sounds good in theory and good in principle, but are you talking about the overall StarkX or Starkware built layer 2, that I can shut that all down if someone has committed a fraud against me? Or are you referring just within DYDX?
so it's functionally the same thing because it's only we're the only thing running on this specific instance of ZK rollup. But uh, yeah, I guess for actually like submitting a fraud proof and how to actually do that, there are instructions that you could go to by looking at both our documentation and Starkware's documentation. Um, but yeah, it's not something that like the average user would honestly be able to do probably.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think this is a it's not a criticism or an observation specific to DYDX, and not even specific to CK rollups. I feel like all rollups are like that. I feel like almost all layer twos are like that, where there's a layer of transparency. So I mean, yeah, we talked about the privacy benefits of this, which obviously, if I can't even verify or see my own fills, then nobody else is going to be able to see them too. So that gives me privacy. But I, how much do we have to trust? And this might sound like a dumb question, I don't know, but how do we have to trust Starkware, this company which has built the layer 2 instance, which does the ZK rollups? I just, the ZK maths is so advanced to me, and I'm not that bad at maths in general, but when it comes to ZK maths, it's like another level for
Yeah.
me. And I feel like there's very few people that really understand and can build this thing and verify it.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. I mean, ultimately, yeah, the math is very complex. You're not necessarily trusting Starkware. You're trusting that the math works out and is right. Um, I guess what I would say is like, your trust when you do a transaction on Ethereum and you see it like you see the transaction, I guess, on Etherscan. um, there is social consensus around it, but like I guess if we were going to take it into the context of like a DYDX transaction, um, very few people are actually like going into like are looking at the transaction. So let's say you did a trade, you traded like $100 of USDC into Ethereum on like margin on layer 1 or something. The transaction that you see there is not going to be very like human readable to the average user, and so like to some extent you're like trusting that math worked out, but I guess that's kind of the difference. Like both systems ultimately rely on math and proofs. I guess the difference is like we're not actually like showing you the specific transaction on chain. You kind of have to assume that the guarantees are correct. Whereas if you really wanted to dig into it on a per transaction basis on layer 1, you could. But again, like very few people are
so
actually
what happens, like, so when you say Starkware is running this instance, what does that mean? What does that look like? What if Starkware just explodes right now? What happens? Like, what is your system depending on in that? Like, what's the underlying assumptions of that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I mean, the only thing that would happen is transactions just like wouldn't be sent on to layer 1. And so I guess they until they send those batches on chain, the whole system couldn't really withdraw onto layer 1 until that's happened. So I should mention for fast withdrawals, there's only a limited amount of liquidity for that. So let's say it's like something like somewhere between 100 grand and 500 grand of people could withdraw using fast withdrawals every 8 hours or something. So the vast majority of liquidity on the exchange is going to be dependent on those proofs ultimately being sent on chain. And if for whatever reason Starkware was wiped off of the face of the earth and like they couldn't do it, they couldn't send batches on chain anymore, people would be able to withdraw based off of the actual previous step that happened on chain. So like things would have to be wound back up until that like checkpoint.
So even though so I've got a certain deposit in my account, or I've transferred it to a smart contract, which makes it essentially on layer 2. And even if Starkware blows up, they lose all their keys. The worst happens. I still have a claim because my layer 1 Ethereum account is connected to what I've sent to layer 2. I'm able to at some point claim back that money.
Yes, yeah, that's correct. So, and it's also important to say that I guess the difference is like if Starkware even turned malicious or Dydx turned malicious, like neither of us could actually like steal your capital. Whereas trust guarantees are different on like something like a sidechain where like that's theoretically possible. So I'd say that is also a big difference where it's like it's still decentralized in terms of like who owns who ultimately has a claim on like certain amounts of capital.
So when you say that though, like someone could steal from me, but I have to challenge them in this kind of system, or how does that work?
So no one could actually steal from you unless theoretically they like stole your like Starkware private keys. Then theoretically they could either like trade to another account or send to another account on layer 2. But ultimately, like when you deposit onto when you make a Starkware account and you deposit, you are basically minted or you're given a like a Starkware private key that's deterministically based off of your layer 1 private key. And so as long as you have that private key, you can't basically your funds are safe.
Okay. And have you had any issues, or so just pivoting kind of from this layer to ZK rollups discussion and back to the Chainlink thing? Have you had any Chainlink Oracle issues at all, or has it been? Because I've heard that there's been a couple of issues with Chainlink. I think like the gold price at one point was really messed up and stuff like that. How do you protect against that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we haven't had any issues to date. I guess the reason or the potential reasons why our Oracle system on layer 2 is going to be much better is because Chainlink doesn't have to send anything on chain to report a price to us. They're reporting prices on our layer 2 as well. And so for that reason, the Oracle price can update much faster and much more cheaply. And then, the way Chainlink works is, let's say we're doing, they're doing an Oracle for like Ethereum. They'll have, let's say, 10 different nodes grabbing prices from 10 different places. And then, they'll like basically aggregate all of those onto our layer 2 and report those prices individually. And so what we see, we see all of those prices come in, and then we aggregate them, and then that is the Oracle price. But let's say one of those nodes gets like something's wrong with the reporting pricing that they're getting. Then if that is either too high or too low, or it's just like it's too far away from what the expected is relative to the other nodes, we just we don't take that price in. So like the price itself should be fairly accurate based off of those assumptions.
So Chainlink has its own sort of protections to make sure that the price is legit, and you're doing additional checks on top of that.
Yeah, that's a good way to boil it down.
Okay, yeah, okay. And so the funding rate mechanism. So a lot of people here, in addition to just aping in and getting long on positions, there's a lot of people doing arbitrage. There's obviously, when that funding rate has been so juicy as it's been the past few months, a lot of people here are doing sort of cash and carry trades. They're getting long on spot, and then they're covering that exposure on perpetuals or futures. In this case, you don't have futures, normal traditional futures contract. You just have perpetual, but there's a similar trade there, right? You just cover and earn the funding rate. How is your funding rate determined? What is the period at which it's being computed, and how is it being computed?
Yeah. So the formula for the funding rate is in our help docs, but ultimately it's very similar to how funding rates are determined on other exchanges. We're not doing anything too novel there. But yeah, the hour, or rather the time period that is settled is once every hour.
And that's so basically it's just for the benefit of the listeners, like it's basically you just computing the over the course of that hour, the mid price in the book versus the Oracle price, and whatever that premium or discount is, you translate that into a funding rate to either tax the longs or to subsidize them.
Yes, that's correct.
And okay, and so one of the points that I mentioned before, because sometimes when you use the term cross margining, it makes people think, oh, I can throw in more than just USDC. I can throw in other assets, but it's a single collateral system, right? You can only put USDC in, and you can cross margin it in the sense that you can trade various positions on different contracts at the same time. Is there any plans to broaden the valid collateral that can be used on the system? It doesn't sound like that's an actual you're not constrained by like doing on-chain stuff because all that sounds like it's just centrally done, the margining, the matching, and then it's just the fills getting pushed onto Stark X. So what do you guys think of allowing people to throw on Tether or ETH or other assets to margin across the collateral to cover the positions on the different to cover the requirements, margin requirements on the different positions on the different contracts.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something that a lot of people are definitely very interested in. The reason why it was actually a technical constraint where we could only have one form of collateral on the layer 2 system, and so that's why we went for the stablecoin. We found that most preferred to trade perpetuals against a stablecoin, preferably USDC for a lot of them as well. So that's the reason we went with USDC. But yeah, we definitely hear the community and a lot of people say that they would like to post margin and other forms of collateral, be it Ethereum or potentially other things. Right now, it's a technical constraint on the system. So it's not something that we could just like do very easily, but it is something that we will definitely look into down the road.
Yeah, so I mean, so that's my next, and that's also why I was asking before about like the spot and margins still being on layer 1. I can give you a pretty straightforward way of why using USDC only is actually not. Like I have USDC and I want to buy ETH, and then I want to earn the perpetual funding by just shorting the perpetual. I can't really do that in this system because I have to buy ETH and then I have to use additional USDC that I have to get the short position for the same amount of ETH, which means that it's twice as capital intensive as if I were to, versus if I were to buy ETH and then use that same ETH as collateral to short in the perpetual contract. So have you had any thoughts of, we've already talked about the multi-collateral thing, but what about combining the spot market into the layer 2 so that people can, and margin, so you can do spot margin trading and perpetual trading all within the same account, basically?
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's something that, again, like in an ideal world, we would be able to do that. But right now it's still a technical constraint, so we can't. But yeah, hopefully in the future, that won't be a technical constraint and we could add more forms of collateral. Like specifically, I guess one good example was on our layer 1 perpetuals, our Ethereum market was actually an inverse perpetual, which means that you actually posted Ethereum as collateral as opposed to a stablecoin. And so that product in particular was like a really easy product to do the cash and carry trade because you could just deposit Ethereum and then go short immediately, all on the same account. But yeah, unfortunately, that's not the case on the layer 2 system. But ultimately, I think it's still fairly similar to like what you might find on even an exchange like Binance, right, where like they still are separating your collateral, your perpetuals, and your collateral, within your spot margin accounts. So ultimately, I think it's fairly similar.
Just because Binance does it doesn't make it right. I like I like how FTX. A lot of us here are trading on FTX. I think that's more of the model where people are thinking about. Like that's really a smooth experience there. But I understand that there's a technical constraint. So let's talk about the order types that you got here. So you got obviously market and limit. Trailing stop, I think, is really cool. But one of the weird things when I was playing with it is that you actually, for the trailing value, you're using a percent versus the current price rather than a nominal dollar amount or whatever. To me, that's, it's obviously valid to do that. But because as the number gets larger, the percentage changes as well. It's a bit of a strange dynamic for me. I like to just do the offset based on like let's say I go long on ETH at 2,500. I would like to set my stop at $100 below, and then just set it to trail. So then it'll follow if the price continues to go up, and it'll maintain $100 so it'll trail up. But doing the percentage, it's more difficult for me to do the maths. But it's good that you have the trailing stop. But I'm not sure if you've gotten any feedback on that, where it's nicer to do a nominal amount rather than percentage.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Yeah, we haven't had any other feedback that echoed that sentiment. Yeah, I guess from our market research in our community that we've talked to, most people think about it in percentages, but yeah, maybe we should think about also having an option for notional. It's something we could certainly look into.
Yeah, and so the other thing is, you know, a lot of people when they are entering an order, whether it's market or limit order, like let them just set the stop and take profit like within one shot. I went into the advanced and it has, you know, you've got like the post only. Um, do you have reduce only? It doesn't look like you do have reduce only.
Yeah,
That's not.
we don't have reduce only yet. That'll be released sometime soon.
Yeah, that's I think super important when especially when it
Yeah,
comes to stops. If you got a stop set, you want to make sure that it's you know
for
checked
sure.
off that it's reduce only. But you know what I mean? Like if I want to be able to go long 10 ETH and then let me just set a take profit and a stop loss price and then shoot it off. Um, and then obviously both the take profit and the stop loss would be reduce only, and then you could just in one nice form set everything you need to do a trade setup. That's something I think a lot of the guys listening have noticed and would prefer to have that kind of order entry experience.
Yeah, totally noted, and we agree completely with that. Yeah, it's something that we're certainly working on.
Um, okay. So I know we got about 10 or so minutes left, but so one thing that we also I mentioned in the beginning of the chat. Last year we were sort of talking when Antonio was on and give him our best. I think it was a great chat last time. But basically, one of the things he mentioned, which I think is particularly interesting now, is about token. And one thing that Dydx hadn't done, like basically you were focused very much on the product, building out the product, and there wasn't really much of a discussion about token. Like why jam in a token into an ecosystem? It's often unnecessary, and it often creates. I don't want to quote him, but I guess, and I don't want to misquote him either. But something along the lines of like it can create misaligned incentives as well. And so you guys obviously have built out a great product here, and now you're scaling it up better on layer 2. But another thing that's happened since we last chatted was that there's a lot of people talking about the Dydx token. And I think DeFi in general there's been sort of this trend now again back to governance tokens, which was something that going back to like 2016, 2017, this was kind of a popular idea. And then I think it kind of died out with the DAO. And then basically ICO season was just centralized teams raising money by issuing a token and then trying to figure out after the fact, like, oh, how the hell do we turn this into something that doesn't suck? But now it's getting really popular to do this fair launch where people aren't even doing a token sale. And I think the best symbol of this was YFI, Yearn, where they just gave tokens out to the community, to people that were using it. And that, and others have sort of taken a similar approach, but they say they give away tokens to everybody, so they don't do a sale, but then they save some for the team. And then obviously you have Uniswap, which had an interesting distribution. They didn't do a public sale, but they obviously had investors that they're answering to, very similar that you guys have investors. So I guess I'm mentioning all of that to sort of say, like, how is your philosophy on as a team changed with respect to whether or not a token makes sense? And do you think this whole fair launch DeFi sort of ethos has played a role in you guys sort of thinking differently about whether or not a token for Dydx makes sense?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, I guess the biggest difference between, let's say, a year ago or so when you had Antonio on and now was kind of where we envisioned Dydx going. And so a year or so ago, it was kind of unclear the direction that Dydx could take. Given that we were certainly a hybrid decentralized exchange, there were many aspects of the system that ultimately still not be decentralized, and that they were very much controlled by the team. And so to release a token that actually didn't do anything was very much against like the ethos of what we wanted to do. But now, I guess as we look forward to the future of DYDX, we definitely want the protocol itself to become more decentralized over time. And so, with that in mind, it may make sense for us to like do some sort of token or do some sort of governance distribution of some sorts in the future. We're still exploring like what this is going to look like, but at the end of the day, I think we want to give more control over to the community, and B, we also want to grow DYDX to become, one of the largest exchanges in the world. And so I think it's become very clear that in order to do that effectively, you need to incentivize community growth and community involvement in your product and protocol. And so tokens, interestingly, have been a very good way to do that, to incentivize people to participate. Um, and so I would say that's another reason is like we want to grow DYDX and we want to incentivize people to help us grow to be as big as we can possibly become. So those two combined, but more. I'd say it's definitely more so weighted to like we purely want to just like decentralize the protocol and make it so that it could operate without DYDX involvement, like DYDX employees. And so yeah, that's kind of like the goal that we have, in the coming year or so.
So what is that? So just forgetting the token piece for a second, but at the heart of your model is you're running a matching engine, a margining system centrally. You're running it on centralized servers, probably on AWS or something. I haven't looked at exactly where you're deploying them, but how do you pivot from that to? Like it sounds like you'd have to like almost start from the beginning in terms of how to model that. Like, aren't you guys in essence still in control of the system at the core, even though the fills are, of course, being pushed on layer 2 and everything? But how do you
Yeah.
get out of that?
Yeah, that is the biggest question that we currently have, and it's something that we're actively researching. Um, but yeah, ultimately, like if I had to predict what DYDX is going to look like 5 years from now, it's going to be very different than what it looks like today. And so, what that actually is going to be is still an unknown. There's a lot of technology that still has to be built, but it's something that we definitely want to build towards, and we're actively looking into and researching.
Yeah, because I mean, issuing the token and letting a bunch of people like the community like create whether it's a governance token and they have a bit of a DAO that is, maybe they could make decisions that on superficial things, but in the end, you guys are running the market, and and no token is really going to change that, even if. I don't know what you guys are in terms of your discussions with A16Z or your other investors. Like, I don't know if there's pressure from them, like, oh yeah, just issue a token, and like they seen what happened with Uniswap and other stuff, and like maybe you give revenue share distributions, or the DAO. Sorry, I guess I should say the DAO makes a decision to give itself revenue distributions. Like, I mean, I feel like when we were talking last year, there was like definitely not really a desire for this. I'm not sure. Are you getting pressure from? I'm not sure how much you can even say about this, but are you getting pressure from investors like, oh yeah, this is the way to cash out? And how concrete have you guys gotten in terms of plans for the token? Because I mean, we're just seeing a lot of people talk about various things. I'm not sure how much of it is rumors and how much of it is you guys actually coming up with these ideas. But like, what can you tell us at this stage here now, April 15th, 2021? Like, where are you guys?
Yeah, I would say we're definitely not getting any pressure from any investors or anything like that. Um, so I'll squash any like speculation or rumors on that. But in terms of where we are with this process, um, I'd say it's still something that we're like researching and working on, but in no way can like we officially say one way or the other if we're going to do a token or anything like that. But I'd say it's something that we are actively interested in researching and thinking about.
Right. I mean, and ultimately, you have an exchange that's running. There's tens of millions of dollars in volume happening every day right now. You're charging fees on that. So, that's ultimately you guys are a centralized team that has investors that you're generating revenue at least already. You have a product already. So yeah, it's not, I can see why there wouldn't necessarily be that kind of pressure, but I guess people, when they see Uniswap and the Paradigm and the payout those guys have had, that there's kind of just general speculation about whether obviously there's people that are wondering like when's the token coming for Dydx and stuff, but it sounds like you guys are still not in any final phases when it comes to this process.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just to take a step back, right? Like, Dydx, given we're focusing a lot on perpetuals right now. That's basically all of our product focus. That's probably going to stay the same for the foreseeable future. So perpetuals, and then potentially even expand into other forms of derivatives like options. And so, like, I guess to grow that as big as possible, um, you want to become you want to make it so that it could run without any sort of centralized institution, right? And so, specifically for derivatives, it's very important to do stuff like that. So I would say that's another reason. Like when we zoom out and like fast forward 5 years from now, we really want DYDX to be the place where anyone anywhere could like trade, um, a lot of different types of products. And we don't envision it being something that's controlled by DYDX team or any particular individuals or anything like that. It's ultimately ideally going to be controlled by the community, which is hopefully going to be vastly distributed.
Okay, this naturally brings me. So I guess it's something that you're researching, and maybe 5 years down the line. What are your thoughts on ETH 2.0 and in general, whether or not Ethereum is actually the right platform, whether it's on layer 2 or in ETH 2.0 or some combination of the two down the line, given the vision that you have and wanting to decentralize that, is Ethereum the right platform? And what do you think Ethereum 2.0 is enough to cover what you guys need?
It's a good question. I would say maybe. We don't particularly know one way or the other yet. Ethereum has been to us, but like many other people, we've witnessed the limits to how much it could scale, and which is why we focused a lot on building on layer 2. But if another layer 1 or another type of platform comes around where we think it's going to be orders of magnitude better than what we're currently building upon, we'd certainly be open to exploring it.
So one idea comes to mind. You've seen Solana probably, and Serum is running a spot DEX on chain on Solana. Is there any specific layer ones you've investigated, like potentially Solana or others, which you might be interested in?
I would say Solana would be one that we would potentially look into. I'd say any research or discussions that we've had with other layer ones has been very high level. It's not something that we probably do within the next 6 to 12 months. And so, in crypto time, that's like an eternity. But I think, in 12 months, like the landscape is going to look very different. And so we'll probably reevaluate somewhere around then and kind of like, take a breath and see like where the ecosystem is, where users are going, and what are the technical capabilities of all the different types of platforms out there.
So 13 months from now, DYDX on Solana confirmed, right? Yeah, we like Solana here. We're big shills of Solana here. We've been, I mean, you say Ethereum's been good to you, but I would say Ethereum's been terrible to you. You basically built this on layer one, and it's a great product. I told Antonio this last year. I love Dydx, and you've covered the gas fees of the fills, trying to do things on the DEX on Ethereum, and it really hasn't been good to you guys. And now you're trying to get it going on layer two, still trying to like keep the Ethereum narrative going, and it's. Yeah, it's still a great product. Don't get me wrong. And I've been trading on it the past couple of days. I think it's a great experience. Anybody that's using Ethereum and wants to trade on a DEX that is performant, I think Dydx is a great solution. But really, I think that it's a better scalable, and it doesn't even have to be Solana. But I mean, there's just other options there, and that could be even better to you than Ethereum has been. And I think that there's always the trade-off between performance and centralization, I guess. And a lot of people say, well, EOS came around and made similar claims that Solana's making. And is that really what some? I mean, I know you said you're just researching at high level, but just sort of preliminarily, like, is that the main concern when it comes to looking at other layer ones, that maybe they're not as decentralized as maybe they should be?
Yeah, I'd say that's certainly one of them. I guess, frankly, the other one is we're building a product where, we want to build where users are, right? And so I think Solana is definitely making a ton of progress there, but user standpoint, I don't think they've quite cracked being on the same scale as Ethereum, right? And so ultimately, we want to build where people are going to be able to access Dydx from a technical level as easy as possible. And that very well may be Solana very soon, but I don't. My personal opinion is like they're not quite there yet.
And what about the multi-chain sort of interoperability ideas, where DYDX could be just something that isn't it's basically chain agnostic, right? And you could maybe exist in the ether out there, where anyone who's on, whether you're on Phantom, whether you're on Binance Smart Chain, or whatever the hell layer one someone happens to be on, then maybe they could interact with DYDX regardless of what the chain is.
Yeah, that's something that sounds good in theory. I think from a technical perspective would require a lot more research and building. I guess ultimately, like the question is, where is the order book and where is the matching engine sitting, and like how does everything connect to that across all these platforms? But yeah, theoretically, like if that was possible for us, and it was like fairly easy to implement. Yeah, I think that could be an interesting idea.
Okay, and so that was basically all the questions I could think of and cover in this. So you mentioned the plans. You want to focus on perpetuals, and it's going to be focused also on layer two on StarkX, and you want to basically be pumping out new pairs every week or so to have a nice, basically huge variety that traders who are depositing USDC into your platform can then speculate on all kinds of different pairs. Any other plans that you think people should be aware of?
No, I think that's probably it for now. I mean, again, yeah, just to reiterate, like we definitely we definitely envision DYDX being the place where you could trade basically any perpetual that you want to. And so we definitely want to become on par with, the Binances and the FTXs of the world in terms of asset selection. So that's something that we're definitely going to be focusing on. And from a UI UX perspective, like we're putting in a lot of work into ensuring that the exchange itself is very easy to use, both from like doing it on your desktop and then also from mobile. So we are working. Right now you could use DYDX on your phone via like a Web3 connected wallet. but we are also working on a mobile app as well. So with all that said, I think, hopefully in the near future, trading on Dydx is going to be an even better solution than trading on maybe your favorite centralized exchange.
How would that work on the mobile app? Would you need to because you need to still deposit into layer 2 via MetaMask in order to trade? Would you generate like a key that you scan with your mobile app?
Yeah, it's still we're still working on it. Yeah, so it could either do something like that via like Wallet Connect or something, or potentially even create like a new wallet that you could send USDC into.
Right, okay. Well, one thing that would be cool, instead of just listing all these different pairs, is broader like basket indices, where you can trade like a DeFi index versus dollar, or like a top 100 coins index. Like letting people speculate on broader sectors of the market instead of just a single pair. I'm sure that's on your map.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good suggestion, and it's definitely on our roadmap as well. So yeah, that is something that we plan on doing in the near future.
Cool. All right. Well, I've changed the talk power in the channel in case anybody thinks I didn't cover anything, or you think that there wasn't something that Corey should respond to before we wrap this up. Anybody can basically ask a question on the mic if you have access. Yeah, usually I'm so thorough that nobody has anything to add. So that's my goal every time, is that nobody has anything to ask, really. Okay, so thanks very much, Corey, for spending time to chat with us. I think it's been really informative. We're really excited about the expanding pairs that you're going to be listing. And anybody listening, you just go to trade.dydx.exchange. Once you go through the process of registering on the layer 2 and approving the interaction with the USDC, once you get into the layer 2, there's no gas fees. You're going to have a bit of gas fees just getting sort of up and running on it. But otherwise, in general, it's a much smoother experience than you'll have like on Uniswap or whatever. You just basically, it feels very much like a centralized exchange in terms of the speed and performance. So and there's decent liquidity, so you can take punts on there, and it's going to have a much bigger product variety, it sounds like, in the coming weeks and months. So thanks very much,